Apologies for the poor audio this week.
I want to welcome you to the final part of our message series that we have called to boldly go. And if you were here for the first message in the series a couple of weeks ago, you'll know we spent a load of time looking at the Greek language. Some of you are now Greek language experts. Because we looked at what these words meant in the original Greek and how they translate into the English, and we discovered that we boldly go. When you read it in the Greek and you translate it back to English, it means this: we boldly go. We never ever means someone else. We never means the person sat next to me. We never means the church over there. We means me. We means us. We go boldly. We take risks. We go into uncharted spaces. But you know what? Why can we go boldly? Because we're not doing it alone. And we're not doing it under-resourced, because actually the Bible says God goes with us. You know, it's called the Great Commission. If you look at the Latin there, the word commission comes from com and mission. Com means together. Mission means to be sent. So we are sent together. But we're not on our own, because Jesus says, I'll be with you. He says, I'll be with you always, even to the end of the age. So we are literally on mission with Jesus. So all of us are boldly going. Church, we've got to go. Yeah. The gospel of Jesus was never meant to be parked. It was never meant to be like a ship docked on the side of the quay. It was always a gospel. It was always meant to be sent. It was always meant to be launched out. I said a couple of weeks ago, we were never meant to be relics sat gathering dust in a chapel. Yeah. But Jesus says, I'll build my church. And the gates of hell won't prevail against it. Do you know what? If you read that in the Greek, interesting, because we always think it says, I will build my church and the gates of hell will not prevail. And we think, oh, well, it must be that hell is attacking the church. Guess what? It's the other way around. The Greek tells us that the church is attacking the gates of hell. The gates of hell will not withstand the attack of the church, because the church is on the move. Yeah. We're called to be the people that reach out to the lost, the last, and the least. And while we may have said this repeatedly for the last 6 weeks, guess what? I'm not going to apologize. Because Jesus, I believe, you read the Bible, Jesus gave us two things he wanted us to do. The first was to love each other. The second was to preach the gospel. Yeah. That's it. And it's not the great suggestion. It's not the great idea. It's not the great, you know what, it would be really, really good if you did that, but don't worry if it's too much hassle. It's the great commission that we go into all the world and preach the good news to everyone. And we've been out a bit of fun with this. We've been running with a very, very loose Star Trek theme, and that's where the phrase comes from. And you might remember the original series. I don't know if any of you are old enough to remember the original series. Yeah. So we've got Captain Kirk, we've got Sulu, we've got Bones, we've got Scotty, we've got Uhura, and then there was this Vulcan. This Vulcan called Spock. And Spock was this super controlled, super logical person. He never shows any emotion. He comes across as quite cold. My kind of guy. But in one episode, there's an episode where Spock catches this kind of alien disease, and the disease changes him. And it causes him, for a while, he experiences what he's never experienced before in his life. He experiences happiness without restraint. And you see Spock throwing off all the rules and all the logic and all the kind of inhibitions he's put around himself, and he experiences what life could be like if there was no pressure, if there was no pain, if there was no conflict. And at the end of the episode, it's really interesting because Captain Kirk says, how did you feel? Which for a Vulcan is a really odd question. And Spock says this, for the first time in my life, I was happy. Yeah. But guess what? It didn't last. Because happiness is not built on an outside influence. It's not dependent on a particular place. It's not dependent on a particular experience. And I know it's Star Trek, but maybe that idea hits a little bit closer to home than we'd like to admit. That sometimes our happiness, our pleasure, our joy, it's based on something else. It's based on an experience. It's based on a place. It's based on a memory. It's based on a possession. And in the Bible, there's a guy called Solomon. If you read Solomon's life, he's incredibly wealthy, incredibly influential, incredibly powerful. He's got all the resources, all the wisdom, all the opportunities to pursue anything in this world that would make him happy. So in Ecclesiastes 7, I decided to test this out. So he says, I said to myself, let's try pleasure. Let's look for the good things in life. But I found that this too was meaningless. So I said, laughter's silly. What good does it do to seek pleasure? And after much thought, I decided to cheer myself with wine. And while still seeking wisdom, I clutched at foolishness. In this way, I tried to experience the only happiness most people find during their brief life in this world. I tried to find meaning by building huge homes for myself and by planting beautiful vineyards. I made gardens and parks, filling them with all kinds of fruit trees. I built reservoirs to collect the water to irrigate my many flourishing groves. I bought slaves, both men and women, and others were born into my household. I also owned large herds and flocks, more than any of the kings who lived in Jerusalem before me. I collected great sums of silver and gold, the treasure of many kings and provinces. I hired wonderful singers, both men and women, and had many beautiful concubines. I had everything a man could desire. So I became greater than all who lived in Jerusalem before me. My wisdom never failed me. Anything I wanted, I would take. I denied myself no pleasure. I even found great pleasure in hard work, a reward for all my neighbors. But as I looked at everything I'd worked so hard to accomplish, it was meaningless, like chasing the wind. There was nothing really worthwhile anyway. Happy Sunday, everyone. But have you ever noticed how much of life is spent, and I'll admit this, I've done this, how much of life is spent chasing the next thing? Chasing the next holiday, chasing the next promotion, chasing the next relationship, chasing the next new purchase, the next new car. You know, this week, literally, we had to have our air conditioning fixed, we had to have new brakes, we got a service booked, our oven blew up, and our boiler needs replacing. That was this week. And we tell ourselves, you know what, next week, when we've done all that, we'll be happy. But how true is it when we buy the car, when we buy the house, when we meet the one, when we go on the holiday and we go, oh, do you know what, I've arrived, I'm happy. And then something happens. Oh, the excitement fades, the achievement just becomes normal, the purchase starts to lose its shine, the relationship starts to reveal imperfections, and then what happens? We start looking at the next thing. Do you know what happens in church? You can go to a church and you think, this is brilliant. I've arrived. This is amazing. I love it. And then suddenly, something happens. You're a little bit disappointed. And you find yourself back on the hamster wheel searching for the next thing. And we spend our lives living in, Glyn Barrett said this, he said, we spend our lives living in a cycle of anticipation, arrival, and disappointment. And here's the thing, the problem isn't that we're looking for joy. Joy is not the problem. God said, have joy. God created joy. I want to suggest the problem is where we're looking for joy. So I want to illustrate, I've got a guitar here, and it looks like a decent guitar. It looks right, it looks like it's got everything it needs, it's got the right number of strings, and I know one chord, but I can play it really well. So I've got my guitar, I've got my strap, I've got my stool, I've even got a plectrum. So I'm ready. I'm ready to play. The anticipation is building. I'm excited. I'm ready to go. I've got everything I need. I've watched a load of guitar players on YouTube. I've read a book. I've got everything I can do to get myself ready to play. Are you ready for my Revive Church debut? Someone's tuned that. Oh, sorry, plectrum was the wrong way around. Now, I'm a guitar expert. And I can tell something's off. So maybe, let me find my plectrum again, I've dropped it. Maybe I need to play a little harder, and it'll just change. Maybe I just need to play more. Do you know what? Some people live their life like this. That I know it's off, but I'm just going to keep playing and hope it blends in, and hope it kind of normalizes. You know, you might not know the theory of music to know that when I play that, something is off, something is not quite right. And what happens is we look at the guitar and think, oh, well, I need a new guitar. It's the guitar. Because it's not me. Actually, it wasn't me. I said I can play one chord, but I can play it really well. But I'd done everything right. I'd done everything I could to get me to a place where I might experience something joyful, where I might experience something good. You might say, you know, when I hear the sound of this guitar being played, and I'll be honest, the sound of a guitar being played well, that brings joy. It can bring joy to you, listening to something being played well, but what I'm getting isn't quite right. What I'm getting isn't what I thought I'd get, and now I'm disappointed. Now I'm looking for new... That disappointed, I turned myself off. Let's try again. There we go. Now I'm disappointed. Now I'm looking for a new guitar. Now I'm looking to have the whole thing restrung. Do you know what? I might even find a different instrument. I'll take up the banjo. Do you know what? I might just pack it all in all together. But here's the thing. Nothing about that guitar is broken. All the strings are there. All the right strings are all in the right place. The body is intact. It looks like a guitar. Everything about the guitar is right. Everything's in the right place. I'm even playing it right at a basic level. But even though I'm doing everything right, something is off. So I could say to Rob, can you play that guitar? And I'll tell you this, it'll still sound like that. Mark Knopfler won't be able to change the sound of that guitar. Jimi Hendrix won't be able to change the sound of that guitar. If you played that guitar, it'll still sound off. How often in our lives do we do everything right? Everything the right way, with all the right stuff, and it still sounds off. Jesus says this in John 15. He says, I am the vine, you are the branches. Those who remain in me and I in them will produce much fruit. For apart from me, you can do nothing. And the idea is if you stay in Christ, if Christ lives in you, then you'll produce fruit. Fruit is a sign of life. It's a sign of health. But if you're apart from Jesus, then you can't produce fruit. You can't live the kind of life Jesus has made you for. You can't live in the fullness of what Jesus has for you. And then Jesus goes on, he says, verse 11, I've told you these things so you will be filled with my joy. Yes, your joy will overflow. One translation says, your joy will be complete. So if I want to find joy in this guitar, is the solution to throw the guitar away? Is the solution to play harder? Is the solution to buy more accessories? The solution is I've got to make sure I'm in tune. And we've convinced ourselves that technique is the thing, that having all the gear is the thing, having the look is the thing, but the thing that's missing is my tuning's off. Is it possible we live our lives like this guitar? That we tune ourselves towards the sound of success. Or we tune ourselves towards the sound of approval. Or we tune ourselves towards the sound of what's going to be comforting. We tune ourselves towards the sound of what's going to give me achievement. We tune ourselves towards what everyone else says matters. And we wonder why we get to life and suddenly life feels like this. I've done everything right. I've done everything I needed to, and life still sounds dissonant. It still sounds like everything is clashing. Can I suggest the issue isn't that we're broken. We've just had our lives tuned to the wrong thing. Jesus said, I've told you this so my joy may be in you and your joy may be complete. Now, at no point does Jesus give instructions to get joy. He says, here's joy. I'll give you joy. You just stay in me. And joy is not the result of perfect circumstances. David says this, you will show me the path of life. In your presence is fullness of joy. Guess what? It's never ever about what you're doing. It's about being in his presence. It's the fruit of being connected to Christ. That's why two people, and I'll say this, I've been in services where one person's gone, that was an amazing service. I just felt God move really powerfully. And the person 6 seats away goes, Was it different God? Different service? Different songs? Did someone have the hearing aid on and someone had it off? You know, you can experience, and the other way around, you can have two people experience the same problem and both will approach it completely differently. One person's joy will collapse if it's built on circumstances. You know, Jesus tells the parable of the wise and the foolish builders. You know, this person's house, let's use that analogy of his house is his joy. And his joy is built on something that's always going to shift. It's always going to move. The other is built on the words of Jesus. So when that storm comes, and interestingly, both houses get hit with a storm. When that storm hits, the perfect house with the hot tub and the bidet and the 7 bedrooms, suddenly that collapses. But the house that's built on Jesus' words, the joy that is built on the presence of Jesus, that's still standing. Because joy isn't found by having everything perfect. Joy is found by having a life that's tuned right. And here's the reality, because I want to get us onto the idea of mission. There are people around us who are searching for exactly the same thing we are. They're searching for joy. They're searching for peace. You know, you watch an advert now. Every single advert promises happiness. Promises fulfillment. I don't know what I clicked on, but the number of adverts I see now for military calisthenics workouts that promise me a better body in 60 days. Or those holiday adverts. You know the ones. Darling, hold my hand. We all know. And then they promise this utopia, this perfect kind of life and happiness. They all promise fulfillment. They all promise a route to satisfaction. If you do this, if you go on this holiday, if you buy this product, you will find joy. And I think the advertising companies, they've cottoned onto something because they've realized that the people aren't looking for religion, they're looking for life. They're looking for peace. They're looking for truth. They're looking for purpose. Can I say they're looking for joy? The problem the advertisers has got, and actually the problem the world has got, is they're looking for joy in places that is never going to satisfy. You know, most people around us, I don't think they're rebelling against God. I think they're exhausted. Because they spend every moment looking for joy. And they tune their lives into, if I can get this relationship, if I can get this car, if I can get this house, if I can get this position, if I can be this successful, if I can get approval in this area, none of it is going to sustain joy. And this is where mission starts. Because it's not about programs, really. They're important. Events are important. Mission strategies, they're all important. But the core of mission is this: when people who've discovered the source of joy care enough to share it. That's mission. You know, we all, unless you lived in Iceland, we all experienced how hot it was this week. Can I suggest, if you were baking in this heat and you discovered that a supermarket were doing a sale on fans, Would you have kept that to yourself? Some of you would. All right, fair enough. But imagine suddenly in Newbridge, and I'll use your imaginations, but suddenly in Newbridge they erupted this spring of fresh, cold water. Would you keep it a secret? Some of you would. All right. If you suddenly stumbled on the cure for disease, would you keep it to yourself? And here's the thing is sharing Jesus. If Jesus is the source of our joy, then sharing him shouldn't be an issue. It should be, I've got to share this. I've got to invite others to meet the one who changed me. I love the woman at the well that Jesus meets. What does she do? She runs off into the town and says, come and meet the man who's changed my life. She had to. She couldn't not do it. And if joy has a source, and if the source is Jesus, mission is not about recruiting people to religion. It's inviting people to say, hey, just stop chasing joy in places that aren't going to sustain it. Let me introduce you to the one who can. So we can take this guitar, and we don't need to modify it. We don't need to get new strings. We don't need to kind of do anything. But what we need to do is we need to find the bit that's not in tune. And we make a tweak. And we make another tweak. Can you see us getting closer? Hopefully. Nearly there. It's good enough for jazz. But suddenly when you retune your priorities, you retune your agendas, you retune what is important to me, you retune what am I going to find joy in, then that happens. Now guess what? I didn't need to announce to you this guitar is in tune. I didn't need to make a billboard. I didn't need to put a PowerPoint up. You can just tell. You can tell that guitar's in tune. There's a sense of satisfaction about it. It just sounds right. It just sounds better. I don't need to tell you this guitar's in tune. You just know. And can I tell you this? The same is true if your life is centered on Christ. I don't need to announce that my life is centered on Christ. I'd like to think people would know. I'd like to think people would see it. I'd like to think people would hear it. Because if you live with genuine joy, then people are going to know. Because you'll stand out in a world that's full of anxiety. If you live with genuine joy, there's going to be a peace about you that stands out in a world that's just full of fear. What's been amazing, and some of you will know our journey, is I've got non-Christian friends, and we've shared the journey in bits. We've tried to be careful. But what's been amazing is non-Christian friends have said, how have you been so peaceful? Because I know. I know that I know that I know. If you live with genuine joy, there's going to be a hope that just radiates out from you, and it's going to make you stand out in a world that's so cynical. Francis of Assisi said this, preach the gospel. Actually, Francis of Assisi didn't say that. Scratch that, he never said it. But he's attributed to have saying this, preach the gospel at all times. If necessary, use words. Here's the point. Before we ever say a word, our lives are a testimony. Can I paraphrase that? Don't just ask Jesus to tune your life, but ask him to make your life so in tune that others begin to ask where the noise is coming from. Because the whole point of that saying isn't that we should, well, it is that we should live in a way that causes people to ask questions. Hey, where's that music coming from? That music sounds amazing. Tell me the source of that music. And then they'll say, why are you so different? Why have you got so much peace? Why have you got so much hope? Why have you got so much joy? And you can say, do you know what? I'll tell you the source of my joy. It's Jesus. Because the truth is, they don't need people pretending everything is fine. They can get that off YouTube. Find a YouTube video in 5 minutes of someone pretending life is fine. What people are looking for is other people who found a joy that is deeper than their circumstances. And I want to suggest today, God just might be inviting some of us just to retune our hearts. That we might have been looking for joy and success or approval or comfort, but Jesus says this, that our joy is complete in him. I've told you this. I've told you to live in me so that my joy may be in you and your joy may be complete. I'm going to invite a proper guitarist up. And I just want to ask 2 questions. The first question is this. What have I been tuning my life into? And it's a moment to be honest. Have you tuned your life to success? Have you tuned your life to approval? Have you tuned your life to possessions? Have you tuned your life to the next thing? Have you tuned your life to what other people think? None of those things are bad. But none of them were ever designed to be your source of joy. So only Jesus can do that. And I wonder if today the Holy Spirit's just saying, hey, your heart's a little bit out of tune here. Let me just do some work. Let me just do some work on your heart because I want to restore you back to how you're meant to sound. The invitation of Jesus is never condemnation, it's restoration. We've been doing Revelation in Bible study. We've been talking about what happens at the very, very end. And there's this idea that God just destroys the world. It's not true. He turns it back to how it should be. Because in restoration, God's not interested in condemning. He's interested in restoring us, bringing us back to him, because it's in him we find our joy. It's in him we find our peace, and it's in him we find our life. So that's a question for you. Here's the next question. Who in my world is searching for the joy that I found in Christ? I want to think about your family, think about your friends, think about your neighbors, your colleagues, the parents on the school run, the person that always seems fine, but you know they're carrying something. And so many people around us are living in the same cycle of anticipation, arrival, disappointment. They're looking for joy, they're looking for purpose, they're looking for peace, but they're looking for places that will never fully satisfy. And guess what? God's placed you in their world. Not to pressure them, not to change them, but your job is to make a joyful noise. To be a witness to the joy that you found in Jesus. I think this mission begins when disciples who are being retuned by Christ help others hear his song. So this week, don't just ask God to retune your heart, but ask him to show you one person who's searching. And then go and have one conversation. Go and give one invitation. Go and do one act of kindness. Ask God for one opportunity to point someone to Jesus. Because here's the thing, when our lives are tuned to Christ, mission isn't an obligation. It's natural. It's an overflow of the joy that we